Next, from the state capitol, we speak with House Representative Jim Durkin, who tells us about the ongoing negotiations over the pension reform bill. This runs about 15 minutes.
So Representative Durkin, we're here May 22nd, we're here at the Capitol. This is real time. It's just legislation. They now don't call it pension reform, they now call it pension stabilization. If that's the name, does that get done in 9 days?
Well, whether it's reform or stabilization, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making structural changes to our public pension systems. I believe that we will get it done, and as a matter of fact, I believe we will get it done by the end of this week.
What gets done?
We are going to pass a bill that will have two major components to it. One is going to require current state employees, including members of the legislature, to make either 3 to 4% increase in their contribution towards their pension. We are going to eliminate the 3% compounded COLA that's available to public employees at the age of 60, which is now going to be 3%, or the CPI, the lesser of the two.
What's the COLA?
The COLA is a cost of living adjustment, which has been built into contracts over the years for public employees, which will allow them, upon reaching the age of 60, they will receive a 3% increase in their current benefit, but it will be compounded on an annual basis.
So now they're not going to get an automatic 3%, it'll be 3% or consumer price index, whichever is less. These days that would be about 1.5%, and it won't be compounded. So that means that if you got a 3% increase one year, say going from 1,000 to 1,030, next year it's still going to be 3% or 1.5% of 1,000, not of 1,030, right?
It's still an increase. It's
an increase, but it's not compounded.
It's not as generous as it has been over the years. Quite frankly, the system has been, I think, getting hit extremely hard by the COLA. I'll give you an example. Last year alone, our appropriation towards our pension system, without getting into regular benefit, $500 million, $500 million was just to pay the 3% COLA for public employees. We can no longer sustain that. We are not going to scrap the pension systems. We're not going to let them zero out, but there are changes. People will not getting as generous as a benefit as they have in the future, but we are not putting them into a defined contribution plan. They will continue to have a defined benefit upon retirement under this plan. So to me, those are the two most important aspects of the reforms. There was a consideration of pushing retirement back to 67 years, but I believe that's been taken out. I don't believe that was ever part of the initial, even though the governor made that statement, that was a last-second insertion to his speech, but I don't believe that that was ever a matter that we took very serious.
Well, Quinn said if you make his employee contribution adjustment, if you make his COLA adjustment and retirement adjustment, you would save $65 to $85 billion over 30 years. If you take out the retirement change, how much of that savings do you get? You get something less than 65 to 85 billion. How much do you get, Jim Durkin, Representative Durkin?
I don't believe that retirement age was actually factored into his original. I don't believe that was the case.
So you think he gets a savings of those two components over the next 30 years, $65 to $85 billion, that stabilizes the state pensions. Is that right?
I don't know what the governor made his calculations and what they were based on, but let's just
go. He said it was the staff, the actuaries. What's your calculation?
Well, in 1 second, I've got to.
What's your estimate?
Well, this way, we're just looking at the COLA itself, and if we put out $500 million on it last year, I believe that this is going to cut in half, if not significantly reduce that portion of the benefit, and let's just calculate
quarter billion savings a year. Is that what you're saying?
At least just on the COLA, but we're going to be adding.
That would be 7.5. What do you get on the savings of the employee contributions?
You're quicker than I am, Jeff. But
30 times a quarter, $7.5 billion.
We're probably talking more along those lines, but we are still saying we're putting 3 to 4% of the employee's paycheck is going to be going into the.
How much is that? $20 billion over 30 years?
I can't tell you exactly.
So it still sounds like you're short. You're not up in the $60–80 billion range, are you?
Well, I guess that's based on his ambitious plans, but we're trying to pass something. There's, in Springfield, you got to be realistic about what you're trying to accomplish.
And you're saying those two things will pass. You're making that prediction here on May 22nd.
Absolutely. I believe that we are going to pass a bill that's going to have an increase in the employee contribution, but also one that's going to reform the COLA.
And Cross and Radonio, how many votes do you think puts Republican votes does Cross?
We're going to have at least 30 votes, probably more.
And What about in the Senate? How many does Radonio?
There'll be 50% plus 1 or 2 in the Senate.
From Radonio?
Yes.
All right. So and are those numbers matched by Cullerton in the Senate and Madigan in the House?
I believe that there will be room to spare in the House. It'll be more than 60. We're not going to be on the nose. I think we're looking between 65 to 70 votes out of the House.
And in the Senate?
I think you'll have the same type of ratio in the Senate as well.
And then Quinn signs it.
Absolutely.
So you guys you're going to pat yourself on the back as a legislator. You think you did a good job, and you guys don't have any trouble getting reelected?
Anybody in the back. We should have done this 2 years ago. We should have done it last year. And we're finally, we've got 1 foot off the ledge and of the cliff, and it should have been done a long time ago. I don't think it's anything anybody should be doing a victory lap about this. People are going to be very angry with what we're doing, but I believe that we're giving at least some relief to taxpayers, because I don't believe that 97% who are not getting the benefit of a public pension should be underwriting pension systems in Illinois. But if we do nothing, if we don't make these structural changes, 10, 15 years, they're not going to be able to make payments, because the assets are going to outweigh, liabilities will outweigh the assets.
All right. What's the margin, Democrat, Republican in the State House now? 64-54?
Correct.
And what's it after the election in November? What's the margin going to be? Representative Jim Durkin, make a prediction.
Republicans 61, Democrats 57.
You're telling me the Republicans pick up the majority in the State House?
They tell you we're going to lose?
You're smiling. So give me one. You're saying you're going to lose. How many votes? How many seats?
I'm saying that we're going to take the majority, Jeff.
Yeah, you're saying that?
I'm saying that. You bet.
You bet your salary. What is it? $65,000 salary you get here in the State House?
I'm not a gambling man, as you know.
You're not going to get the salary on that. But seriously, you really think you got a shot at taking the speakership away from Speaker Mike Madigan?
We have a shot at picking up more seats.
That's 3 or 4. Would that be a good year for you guys if you pick up 3 or 4?
I think it'd be great if we picked up 3 or 4. The map was not drawn in the way it was to be an advantage for Republicans.
Right, so it's a good year if you pick up 3 or 4.
But I will tell you this: that Southern Illinois is trending Republican quickly. It's getting very red in Southern Illinois, Central Illinois, and Southern Illinois. There are seats that are in play.
Is it the social issues or the economic issues? What's turning it Republican?
Tax increase from 2 years ago. Most of the downstate Democrats voted for the lame duck session income tax increase. It was sold on a way to pay off bills. It didn't. It made only payments to our pension system, and that's a vote that's going to chase after a number of House and Senate Democrats as long as they're in public life.
So Representative Durkin, you've just predicted that pension stabilization passes the House, passes the Senate with majority votes from Republicans and Democrats. Is this an issue, or does this take it off the? Does this action, this passing of this stabilization reform of pensions, does it take it off the table for the Republicans?
Well, I think that it plays to our advantage, because the Republicans are the ones that have forced the issue over the last 2 years, and we'll make it well known throughout the state of Illinois that we wouldn't be here but for the persistence of the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans, and a lot of members, particularly in Southern Illinois. They are being twisted and turned by different labor organizations to vote no. They need to be very careful with this vote. The public is aware. They understand right now the abuses in the public pension system, and also that a great majority of people who live in these counties do not get the benefit of a pension, a defined benefit. It's nowhere in the private sector anymore. So there's an angry public that is angry about taxes. They're angry about the pension abuses, and they're not going to tolerate status quo. So I think that there is going to be an interesting roll call, but some Democratic members and there may be some Republican members are going to be who are in very strong labor districts, AFSCME districts, and prison districts. They've got to be very careful. But I think that we have the upper hand, and we have moral high ground on this issue that is going to resonate with voters in November.
Are taxes still an issue? Because the tax increase, individual and corporate, was supposed to expire in 3 or 4 years, right?
That's correct.
Are the Republicans going to take that position that tax increase should in fact expire?
We will. I don't believe that you will find a vote. I'm predicting down the line that you'll see a Republican voting to extend the taxes. If the Democrats want to continue to do this, they did it under false premises 2 years ago. It was sold to the people of the state of Illinois that this is how we are going to pay down our debt, our bills. None of it went towards paying the bills. It went towards our pension payment last year. So, we've got to, make sure we get that message out, but it's a liability.
If you remove that tax increase, do you remove $5 billion in revenue? And if so, how do you buy?
Well, we'll have a Republican governor at that point running the state of Illinois.
2014?
That's correct.
Is that going to be Jim Durkin?
Jim Durkin is going to run for re-election in the Illinois House
so you
in
have
November.
a Republican governor. How do you get by with $5 billion less?
Well, I think there'll be a different approach towards the management of state government. I'm not going to predict how that will happen, but we've had record revenue coming into the state over the last 4 or 5 years, but we still manage to not pay our bills. It means that we've expanded. Medicaid is a significant. It's a horrible drain. We have Medicaid and pensions take up $22 billion of state revenues this past year.
Now there will be a challenge, won't there, as to the constitutionality of the pension stabilization legislation you pass? And what's your lawyer? Do you think that challenge, the constitutional challenge that says that you're unconstitutionally diminishing the compensation of these retirees, of these pensioners, do you think that has a good chance of succeeding in it? And if so, then what?
I'm not overly concerned about that. I've heard that, the threat that it's unconstitutional, but every time I press a button, every bill that I support could potentially be challenged through the Constitution. That is why we have a court system, and I'm willing to take that risk. I believe that we will be on firm ground. I know that there is the parliamentarian and the chief counsel for the Senate Democrats wrote a long dissertation. We believe that it's unconstitutional, but I also know that Sidley and Austin, I believe Mayor Brown and Winston Strawn have wrote, pardon me, boy, I need to go back to grammar, have prepared opinions which states that it is permissible to make changes midstream on current public employees. Its power of persuasion is going to be very important over the next year, but I'll let the courts make that decision. And if they decide that it is unconstitutional, what we need to do is that we need to have a constitutional amendment, one. And I think that's something that we'll do. We'll find out how the courts decide on it. But I'm not going to make a prediction. I believe that my vote is constitutional. I'll let someone haggle about it in the courtroom. But it is a time of, we're in some very troubling times, and I don't think there's an alternative to what we're doing. So I haven't heard anything concrete or substantive from the unions on how to respond to the crisis we have in our public pension system.
Does this show that AFSCME and other unions have diminished power? If you're able to pass this legislation, does it show diminished power by the unions? Let me try that again. I may not have been able to hear with the noise here, or you may not be able to hear me. Does this show, that is, the fact that you folks, Democrats and Republicans, pass this or in your view, will pass the pension stabilization legislation over the opposition of AFSCME and other public sector unions, does it show that the unions are really not a factor, certainly not the factor they used to be in terms of passing legislation?
Well, I think what it's going to show is that for issues that we know are terribly vital to the state government, get to the table earlier and negotiate as opposed to kicking the can down the road, and that's what's going on. I don't think this is going to significantly diminish the power of the unions. They will be very active in the November campaign. That will be a true test of their strength, and I'm not going to pick a fight with the unions right now, but this issue is something which they know was not going to go away. It was not going to be continued on for another year. There's been ample time to review and negotiate, and from what I understand, there's been little input from the unions over the past 2 years.
Last thing, fall election, Barack Obama, Mitt Romney. Are you supporting Mitt Romney 1,000%, and what's the likely outcome nationally?
I'm supporting the Republican nominee, Mitt Romney. It's going to be a very close call. I'm not going to make that prediction. I think that Florida, it's going to come down to 2 or 3 states, Florida, North Carolina, a couple out west. This one's going to be as close as the Bush-Gore race from many years ago.
But not Ohio. You're saying Florida, a few other states, but not Ohio?
Ohio's part of it too, but but Pennsylvania I don't think is really, I think that's going to be a problem. Ohio is coming off of a case that's had some problems, I think, with pensions.
But is the main issue
reform bill, which didn't work out too well. So
is it 1992 all over again, as Bill Clinton said? It's the economy, stupid, or is it something else?
Of course it is. It's the economy. It's you know, I think ultimately at the end of the day, gas prices. It's going to be the property values. It's foreclosures, and it's going to be the unemployment rates, and you know, it's going to come back to the economy. I think that is ultimately going to be the test of the both candidates.
Thank you so much, State Representative Jim Durkin.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.